Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Richard Wilmot and I'm a Partner Solution Architect here at AWS. And today I'm joined by Bruno Valenga from DNX Solutions and Atif from Mosh. And we're going to talk a bit about Mosh's journey to the cloud with the help of DNX. So let's get started with some introductions. Atif, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of what you do at Mosh?
Yeah, sure. So I am the head of technology at Mosh. Mm-hmm. And Mosh is an online health platform for men. Okay. It focuses on an area that's probably not well spoken about and usually undisclosed. So, we focus on 3-4 main areas. So sexual health, hair loss, basically skin care, mental health, and we've just introduced weight loss. So,
nice. So all of those areres that men don't really like talking about.
Nobody wants to talk about it. It's quite stigmatized. You wouldn't talk to your mate about it, and you're probably uncomfortable talking to your GP about it all.
Great. Thanks.
So working in an online platform, it's all completely online. So you will interact with doctors, nurses, psychologists, and
fantastic.
All online, and it's all discreet and convenient is the point. So we've worked with about 80,000 Australian customers over the last few years, and it's just a great space to be in, and I sort of like want to be pioneers in that space in health tech.
Fantastic, that's great. We'll go into a lot more detail a bit later in our conversation. But Bruno, tell us about yourself and your particular role at DNX.
Sure, first, thank you for being here. So my name is Bruno. I am the head of technology at DNX. And basically my role at DNX is to provide the right solutions for the right customers.
Nice.
And to fix their problems.
Fantastic.
One of those customers is Mosh. Mm-hmm. A health clinical company that we are helping in their journey into the cloud.
Nice. Thanks, Bruno. That's amazing. So if I could skip back to you, Atif, you spoke about some of those questions, slightly embarrassing, the challenges that you help men addressing men's health issues. Talk to me a bit about the journey of your company and why the time is right to engage with DNX.
Yeah, sure. So Mosh was a startup. So like any startup, a handful of people are working on it, and you have the founders and you have a couple of technical people get involved, and it grew rapidly. And so the decisions made earlier on were the decisions you stuck with essentially going forward from a tech point of view anyway. So when I joined Mosh, we were about 25,000 customers.
Okay.
We were expecting 40-60% growth, and wow. A year and a half, 2 years later, we've got 80,000 customers.
Fantastic.
So you can sort of see the growth was there, and we were expecting it. And so Mosh itself grew over time with that customer base, and then our verticals grew at the same time as well. Right. All that time was still running on the existing stack, existing tech stack, and the existing people, basically.
But that existing tech stack was obviously chosen for a reason in the beginning.
Exactly right, and it was all about rapid delivery, being agile, right? And so it was a Ruby on Rails stack essentially, and that essentially gave them flexibility to get out into the market quickly, to pivot as quickly as possible, and not worry about all the underlying challenges.
Which makes sense if you're going to be leveraging those managed services. Where was it running?
It was running out of Heroku,
right?
And it essentially was. Essentially didn't have an engineering team, so as developers came in and out, they made their decisions about where it ran and how it ran. And so Heroku was one stack and essentially grew into this monolithic app that ran basically the entire workflow. And then over time, they built their in-house sort of ordering platform system, and that was then decided by that engineer to build an AWS platform. So you had two different stacks running the business over time, basically, and it just evolved as the business needs changed over time as well.
And I suppose from what we understand, that can be a fairly common challenge, especially as you outgrow some of those early stage decisions, which are made with the best of intentions. It's not as if that was the wrong platform. It just, you got to the point where that was no longer necessarily appropriate for the business.
100%. So what they did was perfectly right at that time. It was as it scaled and we wanted to expand quicker, we needed to have more engineers and more people working on the code base, and the ability to separate it became difficult all of a sudden. So that's where we decided, okay, well, this can't be our future state. We need to look at another way of doing this better.
Okay, so that's a really good explanation of some of those technical challenges. Yeah. What is the impact for your business as a result of that? What were those key blockers that didn't allow you to continue growing?
It goes back to the processes and the systems that we have, and it's the quality of getting code out the door, essentially. So when you're leveraging just the one platform, you are sort of in that ecosystem and you're relying on what they can provide you, and you make decisions based on what they can provide you.
Yeah.
And so also at the same time, we wanted to expand our engineering team. We wanted a separate front-end team from a separate back-end team. We want APIs and all that. And so that's where you're like, well, this is now not fit for purpose. We're sort of winding up an entire environment for an API or for a front-end. It's not really making sense.
It doesn't really seem to make sense.
It doesn't really make sense, and you're paying for a lot more than you need to. And we're also working with health data, so privacy and storing data in Australian shores is a big part of that factor, right? And so when you start winding up private spaces in Heroku, you can see the costs like far outweighing the cost of all the benefits of actually doing so. So there were challenges around limited to that tech stack. Not that you couldn't overcome it with money, it was just now, how do I make this more flexible? How do I grow this in a way where teams can work independently and that you also can implement proper CI/CD pipelines to make the quality get better over time as well.
Nice. So I think that's in some respect, it's a great problem to have as you're growing a business from a startup to a scale up to a mature platform where you understand that these are the challenges you have to grow to the next phase.
Correct.
So I think that brings us the question of you felt you needed to engage a partner.
So I recognize that we're engineers and we weren't skilled as DevOps engineers essentially. So and I felt as a business we should focus on the right things, which is building good products, having the right engineering teams. So rather than scaling out and a DevOps team, it made sense to engage a partner to help us and devise on that. So knowing that we wanted to move this future state, we were keen to go out to the market and say, well, what can we find? Who can help us actually get in the right place?
So I think obviously you worked with DNX, which I think obviously is a great decision, but why was DNX the right partner for you? What about DNX resonated with you as opposed to someone else you may have chosen?
I mean, when we had those first few conversations and then DNX came in and sat down and actually tried to understand our business and actually ask the right questions about, what are you trying to do? How do we get there? And, having also the experience of working with a Heroku migration in the past was one of those things that helped me, but it's just the right questions were asked up front. What are you trying to do? When do you need to get it done by? What are your challenges? What's the goal of all this? And knowing that they've asked all those questions and answering it, they came back with, here's the best approach and here's the strategy around it all. So at that point I knew it was the right fit. And not that I met Bruno earlier, working with some of the other solution architects, they were able to guide me and give guidance on what is best practice, here's how you should do it, rather than what I thought was best practice, which is always helpful.
Great. So Bruno, let's pivot to you. From the DNX perspective, why do you feel that DNX was the right partner to help Mosh at that time? What are some of the DNX capabilities that you are bringing to bear to help Mosh?
Yeah, so firstly I would say that DNX tried to understand the business challenge, not just look into the tech challenge, right? We understand that there are tech challenges, but the business challenge is always important as well. And so sometimes people forgot about the business side. So we go back, we sit with the stakeholders, one of them was Atif, and we try to understand the business problem, why they would like to migrate out from the actual platform and move into AWS. So I would just say we engage with them, we understand the business challenge, we go back with a proposed solution for them, and we give them some options that it could take further.
Of course. So in your estimation, what were some of those key technical challenges which were creating business challenges, and how did DNX view the solution? What was a DNX opinion of what could look like for Mosh?
Yes. So firstly, we understand managing 2 cloud environments is a bit of challenge, right? So firstly, we try to engage with just one environment, so it's always the best solution because we have the right tools. And AWS was the cloud provider because AWS has the many services that Mosh already had using in Heroku. The second, I would say the developer experience. That was a good challenge for us because Heroku provides some very good tools already placed in the console. So we'd like to bring this developer experience inside of AWS.
Because that developer experience is really essential to help Mosh scale and grow.
That's right.
With that same level of familiarity that they've had with platforms like Heroku to scale to meet the demands of their customers.
100%, yeah.
Nice.
That's right. So yeah, and that is where it meets the business and the tech side. So we try to bring both teams together.
Nice.
So not just looking to the business side, but to the tech challenge as well. And one of those challenges was the developer experience.
Nice. So the developer experience I think is great because obviously you start off on Heroku, you value that. So a partner like DNX with their strong focus on DevOps, I think really does speak very strongly to that. Let's also drill down a little bit more, Atif, on the key challenges that you have around security, PII, PHI data, and let's talk a little bit about why that is a very key outcome that you need to drive through any engagement with the partner.
Yeah, sure. And again, we're a health tech company, so we're talking about patient data and the security of that, the storage of that, the fact that we are capturing and using it in our processes is at the forefront of our architectures. We need to make sure that is.
And also your customer trust, effectively.
100%. So customers knowing that we're storing the data correctly and handling it correctly is a big part of that trust process as well. And so, it takes one breach or one mistake, and then all of a sudden your trust is gone out the window. So you've just got to make sure you're doing the right processes and you're putting enough security in place at the highest level of security, pretty much, to ensure it's stored in the right way. And so private health data is really tricky area. There's a lot of rules around it where you want to store it, and knowing that with AWS and the guys at DNX understood that challenge, they would store it in the right way, they'll handle it in the right way, and it's something that you didn't have with a Heroku type solution. It was just, you might have wound something up, but you don't know where it was actually running, which server, you had general ID, but not somewhere where you could customize it without great costs, essentially. So yeah, security was a big part of our process, and it may have not been in the earlier days, but I wanted to make sure it was going forward in all the decisions that we make.
To grow your business.
To grow the business and scale it correctly, correct.
So Bruno, I know that DNX, obviously having worked for a great deal of time around the regulatory and compliance space, you're deeply familiar with compliance frameworks like HIPAA, for example. How much of that informed your thinking when working with Mosh?
Yeah, so as Atif mentioned, security was like a high-level point when we start like the conversation, right? And as we are storing like customer data, like one of the points is like to make the privacy like very high as well.
Yeah.
So we came up in the first phase with like a foundation layer powered by Citadel that comes like compliance ready.
Yep.
So we have follow like all the security pillars that brings like more security like for the data that are stored like from the customers in the Mosh like environment.
Nice. So the great thing about the Citadel environment is the fact that it's got the compliance standards built in to make that attestation much more rapid going down the track. Is that something which is absolutely important to Mosh?
100%. And as one of the things that drove that decision to go with DNX was that, AWS has a suite of tools, and how do you know you're using the right tools in the right way?
A partner like DNX can guide you on that journey.
Exactly right. And so DNX was perfect, and then when they explained Citadel and its foundations and its framework and the point of it all, it was like, okay, they already understand the basics, sense. Right? And this is just now about slotting in our requirements on top of it all.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's awesome. Let's talk a bit more about that process. We've discussed what that future state looked like. Let's talk a bit more about that journey. Now, as a migration, there are a number of phases that you took Mosh through, Bruno. Talk us through some of those phases and why they're important.
Yeah, so I would say the first phase is the most important one because it's the discovery.
Yeah.
So where we sit with the customer, we understand everything, what we need to do. The second phase was like the foundation layer, so where we deploy the foundation layer on top of AWS. That will allow us like to start with the application side.
Yeah.
That is like the third phase of the project. So where we modernize like the application, we see all the gaps that we need to do and create like the solution deploy inside of the customer's account.
Nice.
The fourth layer I would say is the security. So we make sure that we have like everything in place and we are ready like for the cutover. And we can migrate like for the legacy environment to the new one. And I would say the last phase is where the managed service comes in. That we support ongoing like the customers in the future projects as well as we have with Mosh.
Nice. So it isn't just a once-off. You really are partnering with Mosh through their journey from that initial assessment where you sat down to understand the business imperative, and then through that phase migration, and onto that the managed service, which helps them stay aligned to best practices without necessarily having to invest skills in that infrastructure management yourself.
Yeah. And it's something that we realize we don't have those skill sets in-house as the level that we like it to be. So using DNX to help us with those managed services, that means we can build up those skill sets over time and then we can get better as we go. But we always know we can fall back to the DNX guys to go, well, are we doing the right thing here? Is this the best solution? Do you have a better way of doing it? And that's what gives us that confidence that we're doing it.
So DNS is very much your trusted advisor when it comes to these pieces.
Correct, yeah. And again, they now know our sort of infrastructure ins and outs and how our apps work and the way we work. And so it's like, here's a problem, and they already know my background. So their solution's going to be a bit more attuned to me.
And And that fits very well like the approach that DNX would like to take with the customers, to be the extended hand like for them. Not just like doing a project and go out and leaving everything like behind, but we like to stay and see like the future as well. We like to look to the future and see where we would like to go now, because there is like so many approaches and we'd like to grow with the company.
Fantastic. I think that's brilliant. So I think often we talk about when partners engage, are they engaging to do the migration in partnership with the customer? Is that your feeling?
Yeah, it definitely was in partnership, because essentially it wasn't a smooth migration, because we had to sort of put some steps ahead of others because of other contractual issues. So we ended up doing 2 migrations in our project. And the way DNX responded to that was they understood the challenges and they understood how to do it, and they fit it into the project plan. And so they adjusted as they went along, and they understood the needs of us at that point. And it was challenging, and we went through a bit of a pain to get that done earlier, but it was a great outcome. At the end of the day, we got it done properly, and
Fantastic.
We learned a lot from that process as well. Yeah.
Because the process was sufficiently flexible to allow for the change, which is natural. It's always going to
happen. That's right. And when you get down to the degree, you can't always foresee everything. And so when you get to that detail, you need to be able to adjust your plans to work that way. And so, DNX were very flexible in that respect, and that their process, we weren't locked. Here's the plan, but it may adjust, and here's the way to adjust it. And when some things came back into scope or out of the scope, some things were removed from scope. It was just a conversation that we had to make sure we were still able to get that goal.
Perfect. So as we start to close off, let's unpack a little bit about what you as Mosh can now do as a result of this engagement. What are the opportunities that have now been unlocked for you?
It's just basically having a single environment that we know can scale, right? And so the scalability of the business is important. With the way we're growing and the way we expect to grow, I don't want to have to worry about, okay, well, do I need to put another server on? The scalability is all there. It's built into the infrastructure as well. So it's also then managing costs.
Yeah.
I'm able to now see costs down to a very granular level and say, well, this is where we're spending more money. And
ensuring costs is mapping to value.
Exactly right. So
Perfect.
I now can see that our staging and development environments cost this much, and it makes sense, and our production environments are here as well. And so it's also let us now go into other verticals. And so from Mosh point of view, we're in men's health right now, but we're also moving into a female brand. And so now just leveraging the existing infrastructure is very straightforward. It's simple enough. We can just turn on another server. We have the templates. We have the infrastructure all ready for it all. So it makes our life much easier and more flexible to grow with the business.
You're a lot more agile, effectively.
Much more agile. And it also attracts developers. So developers and engineers, they want to be in best practice. They want to learn, constant need to learn, basically, as part of their life skills, essentially. So the opportunity to be in the AWS stack and learn all those tools, to do some certifications, it's just an attractive option for most of them. So those couple of big things are a big part of it all. And then security naturally now is on top of all this, so we get a huge benefit.
It's almost table stakes. Without security, you're not
doing 100%, exactly right.
Nice. I think just to close off, Bruno, obviously having worked with a great partner like yourselves, and you as well, having worked with a great customer like Mosh, there's some key learnings. What are the key learnings that you took from this, which I think you can then leverage as you go to serve other health techs, do you think?
Yes. I think the security one was like the most important, because as we are touching like a customer data in the health environment, is always critical, right? So like privacy was like top and number one like priority for us. The other key challenge, I would say, the good outcomes will be like the developer experience, as I mentioned before.
So it underlines those core values which sit with DNX as opposed to necessarily new learnings, I think.
Yes, that's right. So we like to bring like the developers like close to the business. So like now the developer team like has the visibility, like the whole visibility what is happening on the AWS environment, and they are able like to play around with the services as well.
Perfect.
And I think like scalability, one Atif mentioned about the scalability, not just about like the services like P-scale, but also like the company. So now, as Atif mentioned, they are launching like a new product, and they can launch like more products like in the future.
Fantastic. Which is helping you drive significantly more value to your customers as you go.
That's right.
And also brings like more flexibility in terms of using new services from AWS, not just in the application level, but like we have like machine learning, like the future, AI, and so on, and AWS provides like all of those services. So now Mosh has the power to use like those services like in a scalable way.
To uncover more opportunities, more product lines as well.
I understand. And so we're not limited to just, okay, this is what Heroku provides us or what we can get off the shelf. Here's a suite of tools that we may want to use and can jump onto.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think that's great. And in closing, what are some of the key messages that you'd perhaps want future DNX customers to learn from your perspective?
I would say, effectively, be clear about what your goal is going to be, and you know, understand what you're going to get out of this, the return you're going to get from this infrastructure. So stick to how you're going to get to that and the pathway there. Be flexible, because things can change, and there are a lot of technicalities that DNX will uncover for you. And it's also about, well, focus on what you're good on, and you know, you focus on the engineering and the product side stuff. Leave some of the more difficult stuff to the experts, essentially. So be open to what their suggestions are and what best practices, essentially.
Fantastic.
So I didn't want to dictate anything, but I had some idea what we should do, but obviously they know better.
Awesome. I think that's a ringing endorsement there, Bruno. And then to close off, how can folks get in touch with you with the journey with DNX?
Yeah, so we are an Australian company, so I would say the best way is like to contact us like the website, DNX Solutions.
Fantastic, excellent. Well, thanks very much, folks. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. So,
cool.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.